Good morning, and welcome to another inspiring episode of the Good Morning Minute, where we start the day with purpose, passion, and a little bit of power. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and today's conversation is part of our special series in partnership with the Empower Her Steps virtual conference, a movement rooted in helping women rise, heal, and walk boldly into the life God has designed for them. Our mission is simple but powerful, empowering life purpose, because we believe that when a woman finds clarity in her calling, everything changes for her family, her community, and the generations to come. So friends, grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and get ready to be uplifted as we dive into real stories, honest lessons, and bold steps towards purpose with our incredible guests today. And our guest today is Katelyn. Katelyn, welcome to the show.
Hi, Angelina. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. But before we do so, why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, my name is Katelyn Pfeiffer. I am a former pastor's kid turned pastor's wife. I am a stay-at-home mom of two beautiful children. We have an almost 4-year-old. He'll be 4 on October 1st, and we have a daughter who just turned 2 on August 2nd. So if that does not have my hands full of taking care of two littles and helping to run a church, I am also an award-winning young adult Christian dystopian author with 2 books out and working on her third currently. So life is crazy. Life sort of never slows down for us, it feels like, but it's so full and it's so wonderful. And I honestly couldn't have asked for anything better.
It sounds like you do have your hands full and juggling many opportunities and just following in your calling for sure is what I'm hearing.
Mhm.
So, Caitlin, before we get started, I like to just do a fun little icebreaker question. So, my question to you before we get started in our conversation is are you more of a sunrise or sunset person?
Oh my gosh. I would say I am probably more of a sunset person. I enjoy my sleep. I don't like to get up early in the morning, but now that we have kids, I'm finding that I will kind of take sleep wherever it goes. So maybe I'm kind of in the middle. I don't know. Maybe I'm a dusk person at this point, more of a less of a sunset and more of a dusk person at this point. Yeah.
I can't imagine. My kids are all grown and adults and having babies of their own.
Oh,
So
wow.
I can't even imagine what that was like for me back many years ago. So I can just imagine. It's kind of like take it where you can, I think. Just if they're napping, let's nap. Let's all nap and get some rest for sure.
Yep, there have definitely been days like that where I'm like, okay, all right, Amos, he's our oldest. Your daughter or your sister is napping. We're just going to relax on the couch for a little bit, and mommy's gonna close her eyes for a few minutes. And that,
Mhm.
yeah, take it where you can get it for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Caitlin, let's go ahead and just jump into the heart of our conversation
Okay.
today. And I'm going to ask you, what was a defining moment of pain or challenge in your life, and how did it impact you?
Yeah, probably one of the biggest defining moments of pain. There's actually two, and one of them is one that we're walking through currently right now, but I can get to that one later. I would say probably one of the most defining moments of pain in my life was in 2010. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Mm.
And that we probably noticed her getting sick around Halloween, Thanksgiving of 2009. But in 2010, she ended up being diagnosed. And by Memorial Day of that same year, she had died. So it was a very hard fought battle. It was a very short battle, but I also remember it being probably the longest 4 or 5 months of my life at the time. And it really so I had been a Christian. I'd given my life to Christ when I was 5. I was actually watching a Godzilla movie marathon, and in my 5-year-old brain, I thought that this was actually happening in real life, and I was so terrified that I was going to get squished by Godzilla, and I didn't want to go to hell. So I gave my life to Christ then. And like I said, my dad was a pastor. I'm a pastor's kid, so we were always in church, and God had always been a part of my life. But after my mom passed, I felt so betrayed by that. We had been praying for her healing. We had been praying for her to be revived and to be made whole. And I just felt that he didn't hear me. He didn't hear my heart's cry. And I ended up walking away from the Lord, which lasted about a week. And I was actually on the treadmill at the gym, and I prayed and I said, God, if I'm gonna redevote my life to you, I need you to show up. You got to be there for me. I can't do this without you. And I remember very clearly hearing him say, "Okay, I will be there." And that was probably June of 2010. And then kind of fast forward in 2011, I moved out to Seattle, Washington, because I felt the Lord call me to live out there, and I struggled beyond belief. But I knew the reason the Lord had brought me there was very clear, even before I got there. It was that living in Virginia, everything in my life reminded me of my mom and of that loss. All of
Mm.
my friends group, my church. I was still living in my parents' home at the time, and I couldn't properly grieve what was going on because just everything was so overwhelming. And so moving 3,000 miles away to a place where my support group went from a couple hundred to about 10. And these were people that didn't know me, didn't know my story. It really allowed me to have that space to grieve her and to figure out what I wanted to be, because so much of where I thought my life was going was wrapped in around my mom. And it was a really hard journey. And then in 2013, I moved back, and that was when I heard my identity for the first time. That was when I started getting healed up of lies and all of these things that had taken root in my life and really threw me on a trajectory of walking with the Lord and hearing his voice and seeking him and seeking his face. And I think that if I hadn't have gone through what I did in 2010, it wouldn't have prepared me for what my husband and I are walking through now. We just miscarried our third child about a little over a month ago, and so I'm in the thick of that right now. But if I hadn't have experienced what I did with my mom and heard, really hearing eventually from the Lord that he did heal my mom and showing me a picture of her in heaven, fully restored, fully healed, that would
Mm.
not have prepared me adequately, I think, for what we're walking through right now.
Mm. Wow, Caitlin. And that, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing truth with us today. I know that just kind of working in the child welfare
Mm.
field, there's so many things that are stripped from children and from parents and whatnot. There's this training that we normally use just to kind of give foster parents a perspective of the
Mm.
loss and grief that children go through when they are entering into the foster care system. And one of the things on the activity, because it's like post-its and you put like your
Yeah.
family and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the post-its is a your faith. And
Mm.
so we walk through a scenario where we're saying, okay, a natural disaster happened and you lost your home. So take that, remove that from the list. And so we go through all these scenarios, removing bit by bit
Wow.
things in your life, and we hit that rock bottom a moment and they're like,
Mm.
now your faith is gone. And it does happen sometimes because
Yeah.
and so I say that to say that there are some people that last bit of hope, that last bit of faith and just belief can easily be torn off the
Hmm.
list when we face such, devastation.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing that with us. So, wow. And then just to experience it now in your present,
Mhm.
but having a better understanding of what that looks like. And as you're walking into like a healing and growing season, what is that like for you? What's the healing and growing from all of this?
A lot of hard conversations with God. A lot
Mhm.
of, with my mom, there was a lot of yelling at him. There was a lot of pounding on his chest. There was a lot of just all of the ick that I was feeling needed in my heart needed to come out. And he was such a gentleman. He never backed away. He never backed down from the truth and
Mm.
continually calling out my identity. But also for me, it wasn't just this is what I'm feeling. Okay, bye. Like I'm done. It was, I need to know the truth about this. I need to know what are the lies that I'm believing? And what is the truth? Because so often when we're in such an emotional state, the enemy is so quick to get in there and speak lies to you, and they're always wrapped in a kernel of truth. And so so you spin, and you need the Lord to step in and say, "No, no, baby. This is what the truth of the matter is. This is what I say is true." And we know that God's word is infallible. And so if he says it, it's true. He can't
Mhm.
speak in lies. And I'm also a very visual person. So getting pictures, he speaks to me in dreams and visions, not just emotional, but I see very deeply within the spiritual. And I remember one of the there was two pivotal healings with my mom. The first one came within the first week after she had died. And we were in the midst of planning the memorial and picking her ashes up for the crematorium. And it was just such a heavy, heavy, dark time in our lives.
Mhm.
And my mom was only 54 when she passed, so she wasn't that old. And I was 24 when she died. I hadn't yet turned 25. And so I remember crying myself to sleep, and I think it was the second or the third night after she had died. And I was just crying, and I was just crying out to the Lord. I just want her back. Like, I just want my mom back.
Mhm.
And I fell asleep. And then all of a sudden it was daylight, and I was awake, and I could smell bacon being cooked downstairs, which is one of my favorite foods. By the way, I'll sit and I'll eat a pound of bacon just by myself. And I walked out of my room and I walked down the stairs and I came into the kitchen, and my mom was there. And she was healed. She had all of her hair. Her skin looked radiant, and she was cooking bacon. And I was completely taken aback. And I looked at her and I said, "What are you doing here?" Like, it just kind of came out of my mouth. And she turned around and she said, "I'm cooking bacon for your dad." And then she looked right at me and she said, "And I want you to know I'm okay." And I
Mhm.
woke up in that moment, and it was obviously so nighttime. And I cried myself to sleep again, but it was a very different kind of cry because I knew I had never had one of those dreams before, but I knew in my heart of hearts that God had taken me to heaven, and he had let me see my mom, and he had let me see her healed. And then many years later, when I was back here, when I was in Seattle, I just shut off all of my emotions because it was easier. So when God called me to move back, I had to reopen all of that again. And I had to go through the
Mhm.
whole grieving process again, and figuring out who I was without my mom's guidance and all of those things. And I think I was in church. I think it was during worship, because the church I was going to had beautiful worship that always just took me to a very heavenly place. And I just was asking God, I said, "I don't understand why. I don't understand why you took her away when alls we wanted was for her to be restored." And it was a split second, but I got two images of my mom, and one was of her in a wheelchair, completely comatose, just a vegetable. And then the other one was her in heaven, dancing with her family, completely healed. And God said, "Baby, I did heal her. It just didn't look like what you wanted it to look like."
Mhm.
And I knew that the first image was what would have happened if he had brought her back to us. She would not have been my mom. She would not have been her anymore. And the second one was her in heaven. I had to heal that. That's not something anybody could have ever said to me. Like, "Oh, well, he did heal her." I probably would have hauled off and, hit somebody if they had said that to me. But in hearing it from the Lord, that was exactly what my heart needed to heal. And I think in that moment I really really stepped into the healing process and was able to move forward in grieving my mom. And I still miss her. I'm never going to stop missing my mom. There are moments in life now with my two children that I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, she would have loved to hear that, or she would love to see those photos." But it's okay because she's in heaven and she is getting to see them, and she knew them before we knew them. And it's a beautiful
Mhm.
thing. It's just different. She's just not here.
Mhm. Man, and I just your story pulls at my own because I lost my parents, both my parents, by the time I was 28. And my mom was 48 when she passed, and my dad was 54. So, like, just very, like, I feel like almost in the mid stride of their lives. And
Yeah.
so I can kind of understand because as you're explaining, like, I just, wish she was there and, the things to experience. But as you're growing into your parenthood and the things, I totally can understand and relate. And I think that's just amazing, though, how God works in these times and I love that you have conversations with him. And it's not
Mm.
like these, you're this superior being, and I'm being just so submissive in my prayer, but actually having a conversation with your father, like
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And I think
Thank you.
that's the relationship that I value with God, in my own journey, and the real and the truth that he is there to answer questions. And he wants us to question him. He wants us to say, okay, this is in the Bible. Show that to me. Help me
Yeah.
understand it. Because that's been my experience with him too, is, he'll turn around and go, okay, let me show you how let me show you the truth behind that.
Yeah.
And it deepens my faith with him. It deepens my trust in him. It deepens my love. And I think that is the beauty behind your story, is
Mm.
how he is there to just hold you up
Yeah.
through the midst of it all. And so when did you start sensing, there was some purpose behind a lot of what you're experiencing?
I think it's just been as time has gone on, the Lord, it was 2017. So I had been on my deep healing walk. Because like I said, I gave my life to Christ when I was 5, but actually learning how to talk to God and what his voice sounded like, and going through, our church had a ministry called the Freedom Ministry. I think the church still does. I'm at my husband's church now. And it was all about breaking off the encumbrances so we can better run the race, and so that we can learn to recognize the Father's voice, so that we can better tune out the enemy's voice and even your own. We all have our own internal voice that likes to crop up every now and again. And so I think it was 2017 that I felt I heard author spoken over me from the Lord in prayer and from other people. And I thought, well, maybe I'll tell my story. And I'd been very open about my story um, to anybody, not just to anybody who would listen, but to anybody that it came up in conversation, because I was on my healing journey with that. And so a lot of the people that I was around, they were with me through that whole journey. And I've been very open with people about that part of my journey. But it's really kind of come back around in the last couple years, where I've gotten to talk to people about that piece and say, look, this is where I was at and this is where I am now. And even I had a friend who our stories are very, very similar. She's lost both of her parents now, and she lost her mom to cancer, and sadly her father later to COVID related issues. And so it was really incredible to be able to come alongside her and say, I know that you know this, but being on the other side of it, it's never gonna be okay. It's never gonna be okay that you don't have both your parents, but at some point it will get easier, and it won't hurt as bad. And I was able to share with her just things that the Lord had shown me over the years, and with other people too, walking in grief. Maybe not even the grief that I experienced, but grief is universal. We all feel it at some point in varying degrees. And I think we can all relate to another person. So being able to have, oh gosh, it'll be 15 years, 16 years next year since my mom died. So having that under my belt to say, I've been there, I've been where you're at, and I can tell you that it's not gonna be this hard forever. And I can share that bit of my story. It's been a real blessing that the Lord has given me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, just the clarity that you speak from, like I'm a true believer that the truth will set you free, because I've seen it in my own life and I've experienced it. And so to see that be the stepping stone and the thing that leads you forward. I mean, it just exudes all over you. And I think that's what we're here for. That's why we share the things that we go through with others and we tell our stories because it's to help people come out of the despair that we can easily fall into and just like make a life out of it and just accept it. And you talked about identity and you talked about how the Lord spoke truth into your identity and how you discovered what that was. I think that's the message here is like, tell your story and let me tell you how real God is and how living in despair and living in the midst of pain isn't who you are meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because God, Jesus didn't promise us in the Bible a perfect life free of pain and hardship. He even said that there will be trials. You will be persecuted. There will be things will come against you. But God also doesn't want us to live in that. He doesn't want us to live in our hardships. Paul prayed for the thorn to be removed from his side, and God didn't do it. And he still said to God be the glory. Like, it's okay if you don't remove this. I want it removed, but there's a reason it's here. And if you can, and I think that was what helped me the most was not believing that lie, that the pain is gonna overwhelm and break you and that the pain is going to be too much to handle because then once I was able to push past that, I was able to dive into things with the Lord. And there were some things that he wanted me to talk about that I just said I'm not ready for this right now, and he said okay. And then we talked about it later when I was ready, but not being afraid of the pain because the enemy wants you to be afraid of it because he doesn't want you to get the promise and the blessing and the freedom that is on the other side of that. But if you can just push past the pain and the discomfort and lean into God, lean into Jesus, and let him take that off of you, then it's a rush. It's almost intoxicating what what happens when you start getting healed up of those things and you start walking in your identity in Christ. And there's a reason that it was called the Freedom Ministry because it's so freeing to be able to finally be who God wanted you to be.
I love that. Well, Caitlin, as we start just kind of closing out some of our conversation, I do want to ask you a question that I ask many of my guests, and
Mhm.
that's one of legacy and impact. If
Mm.
today were your last day, what would you want to be remembered for?
I think I would want to be remembered as a woman who loves God and just wanted to teach that to my kids and love people well. Sometimes that means putting up boundaries with other people that are healthy for both, but I want to love people well and I want people to know that they are loved, not
Mm,
just that they deserve love, but they are loved.
mhm.
And whatever that looks like, I'm here for it.
I love that. And so let's say someone's out there and they're still trying to figure out their life purpose. What kind of truth or encouragement could you give them?
I would definitely say if you're not reading your Bible, you need to be reading your Bible every day. It sounds cliche because a lot of people say it, but it is what has helped me to survive the miscarriage is being in my Bible every day, being grounded in that, because then it's easier for me to spot the lies or the moments when my emotions are getting in the way.
Hmm.
And then I would just say find a church that is speaking the biblical truth and press into that and really find a mentor who you can trust, who can be there to walk with you and who is okay saying they don't have all the answers because I don't have all the answers. But
Mm,
the great thing about that is we can learn the answers together and I can learn different aspects of the Lord as I'm walking with other people.
lovely. And Caitlin, if someone wanted to get in contact with you outside of this podcast, maybe purchase one of your books, how could they
Yeah.
do so?
Yeah, so I am on Facebook, Katelyn E. Pfeiffer. You can also find me on Instagram as the Provenance Chronicles. I'm also on Threads as that, and that's my author page on Facebook. That's probably the easiest way. I would give you my website, but it's really long. So I don't want to say anything wrong, but you can always find me on Facebook and send me a message either there or Instagram. Yeah, those are the best ways, I think.
Well, thank you, Katelyn, for sharing your heart, your story, and your light with us today. Conversations like this remind us that purpose isn't about perfection. It's about showing up and growing through the things that we go through and trusting that every step matters. Here at the Good Morning Minute and through the Empower Her Steps movement, we believe every woman has a calling worth discovering and a voice worth using. So wherever you are today, friend, remember your purpose is powerful and you're not walking alone. Until next time, keep rising, keep trusting, keep walking boldly into the life God has designed for you. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.